welcome to Cinemaholics. I'm Jon Negroni from the San Francisco Bay Area, and with me, I have this guy who, whenever he wears glasses, I want to be in a relationship with him. It's Will Ashton.
What up? Yeah, you're the one wearing glasses this time, and I'm not, so I guess we're kind of fitting the dual persona of one Superman this time around.
You did have your aviators phase where you're like always wearing glasses on the recordings, and I kind of miss it. You've changed a little bit.
I mean, I wore... Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, you're talking about the... What do you call those? UV...
Oh, the blue blockers.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yes. That's what I'm wearing. So we were not far removed there. Well, Ashton, we haven't talked about a movie together in a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Very excited to. A lot of movies have come out since the last time you and I chatted. We're not going to talk about them. We're going to talk about Superman. I mean, real quick, it's been a fun summer so far. Some stuff has come out. I just saw F1 last night, but we've also seen things like Elio. I don't think either of us has seen Jurassic World Rebirth. Is that the case?
I have not seen it, no.
Yeah, same. I have no idea if it's good or bad. I assume it's bad because that's what my heart says. I think I've heard rumblings that some people enjoyed it enough, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard mostly bad things. A few people were like, yeah, it's kind of fun, but for the most part, I've heard it's a stinker. But yeah, I mean, I'm just, I don't know. I feel especially after Dominion, I'm just kind of over it. I feel like that, to me, is kind of similar to like Rise of Skywalker, where that film killed my interest in the franchise for Star Wars, and I feel like Dominion kind of killed my interest in Jurassic Park or World. So whether or not this new movie's any good, I'm kind of just disinterested at this point. But it seems like a lot of people are watching and some are liking it.
Apparently so, and it's not the only kind of franchise movie that's been sparking discussion. You started a new column pretty recently called Franchise Fixations. It's a written column on cinemaholics.com.
Well, thank you.
You wrote about Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning, and you also wrote about Ballerina. That's your latest one from the John Wick universe. That's another movie that you and I, we talked about maybe talking about, but we never got to. And I wish we had more time to talk about all these things, but it seems like that column is shaping up. It seems like you're having some fun with that. If you want to explain it, of course, what's the elevator pitch to the listeners?
So basically, I wanted an opportunity to kind of go long form on some of the movies I've seen based on franchises that I am at least more well versed in than others. Like I could do Jurassic World, for instance, but something like whatever anime franchise, like something like if a One Piece film came out, I wouldn't feel qualified to write about that per se.
I'd get the guest column, right? You'd have to tag me in,
But yeah, it's kind of a way for me to kind of wrap my head around some of the franchises that are coming out. I feel like I'm taking a sort of if you can't beat them, join them approach, where rather than just kind of complain about the sort of void of creativity that's coming out, I want to kind of get a little heady with some of the franchise films that are coming out, kind of compare and contrast and, just kind of talk about where they fit into the franchises that they embody, good or bad or both.
Yeah. I've been liking these. They feel like really unique breakdowns, of not just the films, but also their context. And like each one kind of has a central question behind them. And yeah, they're different from reviews. They have kind of like review qualities to them, I guess. But I don't know, I find them just a bit more digestible in the sense that, like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of those podcasts and YouTube channels where they talk more about the bigger picture behind franchises and how that stuff comes together. So that's somebody's bag who's listening out there. I, of course, recommend it. And I've been enjoying checking those out there on cinemaholics.com. Before we talk Superman, I mean, are you planning to do one for Superman? Because there you go. That's a franchise and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I plan to. I wrote one for Final Destination Bloodlines, which should hopefully come out pretty soon. I have one I started on 28 Years Later, and one I started on, of all films, Medea's Destination Wedding, which I watched last night. And I wasn't planning to write about it, but I feel like I need to exercise some demons having watched that film. And I've never really had the chance to write down my thoughts on the Medea films, which I find deeply troubling and fascinating in equal measures. So I hope it spins a fun, kind of thoughtful column piece. But yeah, I definitely have some in the works, and I'm excited to keep diving down into this. And I wouldn't be opposed if Jon Negroni wanted to get in on the fun.
Well, I got to say, the Final Destinations Bloodlines one, It's right on my desk today. It's right over here, right next to the Epstein files.
Oh boy.
So got it. Who knows which one will come out first, right? So
Yeah.
we'll get to that when we get to that. I know it's a
Mm-hmm.
little weird not talking about Elio, the new Pixar movie. I have talked about it in other places. I did a review of it. And yeah, that's another thing that maybe once we have some larger year discussions, maybe for in between drafts, which by the way, congrats to the site that I co-founded with the former editors, the young folks. In between drafts is officially now Rotten Tomatoes certified.
Oh, okay,
Rotten
cool.
Tomatoes publication. So that's
Nice.
now public. Big celebrations all around. Very happy about that. And we just put out our best movies of the year so far list.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few movies on there that I haven't seen. I haven't seen Friendship. I really want to. I've heard it's really good. I haven't seen Materialist. I don't think it's on the list. But I know, Will, you wrote something. You wrote a blurb for something on that list. I did too, for Ballad of Wallace Island. The one you did is a movie I hadn't heard of. I don't even remember the name of it.
It's Universal Language, which I think you'd actually like a fair bit. It's from the director of The 20th Century, which we covered on the show.
Oh, nice. I was just thinking about that movie the other day because somebody compared one of my latest short stories to 20th Century, Paper Dreams. And I was like, oh, that's a compliment, I guess, but also a little disturbing for me mentally to consider.
Yeah, actually, I think you in particular really enjoy Universal Language. But yeah, I wrote a little bit about why I like that movie so much. I feel like this year there have been several films I've liked, maybe only a couple that I've like really liked, which I don't think is a bad thing, but necessarily. But I feel like by this time this year, for most years, I'm loving at least like 5 or 10 films. And I feel like for me right now, it's like 3 or 4. So I'm hoping the second half of this year is really going to pick up and be, terrific in all the ways I would hope it would be. But yeah, Universal Language I loved. I really liked Sinners as well. And I think that was covered on the list as well. No Love for Ephus, which is one of my favorites for the year so far. I didn't see that one on the list, but yeah, there are a couple on there like you I still need to see. I still need to see Ballad of Wallace Island, as you mentioned. Bring Her Back, I still need to see. I haven't seen a couple others that were on that list. So yeah.
Yeah. And the honorable mentions too. So there are even more extra fun films on there. One of my honorable mentions was Sorry Baby. All kinds of movies we didn't get to. And for those of you who are listening who aren't aware, one of the reasons we don't do this show as much as we used to is because I took a pretty big step back from film criticism this year. I did Sundance at the beginning of the year, but I haven't been watching new films week to week like I used to. I haven't been going to all the press screenings and everything. I've just been watching movies a lot less lately. It was a big event for us to go see F1 last night. And I mean, I did see Sinners, but yeah, again, it was like way after it came out. I've been focusing way more on creative fiction and writing short stories and working on some new things that are being published. And I'm happy to say too, Will has been writing some cool stuff on that side too. So we've been having fun. We do apologize. We haven't been around doing the show week to week like we used to. But it is fun that we get to talk Superman. I'm ready to get into Superman because I have so many thoughts. Just call me John Shapiro.
I guess, yeah.
You're like, do I have to? Okay, yes, Superman, the 2025 version of Superman. This one's not really a reboot. It's technically a soft reset, except it's also kind of the start of the DCU. It's actually kind of confusing because there are some things that have carried over from the previous slate of DC Universe movies, like the stuff that James Gunn worked on already. So, things from the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, essentially. But this really is like the first legit start to this new era of DC, the first proper outing for James Gunn at the head of it with Peter Safran. It's also being called DC Studios at this point. And yeah, it feels like the beginning of something for sure. So this movie was announced what feels like a century ago, back when, again, James Gunn and Peter Safran were unveiled as the new heads of DC's film division. And they immediately announced this big slate of films that who knows if all these are going to get made. I think at least Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, yes, but they're also looking at doing Swamp Thing, Booster Gold, Wonder Woman, Batman, all that stuff. I think the latest we've heard is that they are working on Wonder Woman and Batman right this second. So we'll see what's going to be a movie, what's going to be a TV show, and all of that. The film also used to be called Superman Legacy, but they dropped the legacy. It's still there in the subtext of the movie, to be clear. But the big thing to take away, if you're going into Superman 2025, you're like, what is this? It's not another origin story. It's not Man of Steel in the sense where we see Krypton explode and we see the Kents in Kansas, picking the baby out of the cornfield, all that stuff. we are kind of just getting dropped into like Superman the animated series, the movie. Like that's kind of the setup for folks at least who did watch Superman the animated series. And Will, you didn't really watch the DC animated stuff growing up, right? Like you didn't even see like Batman the animated series, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I mean I've seen Mask of the Phantasm, but I haven't really watched the shows all that much, to be honest.
Right, and Superman, of course, isn't in that. So you haven't seen that. There is like the Justice League show, Justice League Unlimited. That's sort of the Bruce Timm kind of interpretation of the DC characters. And so that was my expectation, like going into this movie. I was like, oh, is this going to be kind of taking a lot from Bruce Timm? It actually takes a lot if you're into comics and stuff and you're curious. It takes way more from the Bronze Age of Superman comics, a little bit from the Silver Age as well. So maybe we'll talk about that. But the key thing to know is that you're getting dropped kind of into what a lot of people have said feels like the second movie of a series where you just kind of skip the first one. So it's like going right to Spider-Man 2 instead of doing Spider-Man, if that makes sense. So Superman's fully formed. He's already wearing the suit. He's already doing the job. And he's also, at this point, trying to figure out, what does it mean to be Superman? How do I be Superman? This world sucks. Like, how do I figure this out? He's 3 years in his career and all of that. So what we then got after all this kind of build up and all these years since the last time we saw Henry Cavill take on the role. I mean, the last time we saw anything from DCEU was the Justice League Snyder Cut thing. It was like this 4-hour thing. And I'll be honest, Will, maybe you'll disagree, maybe you'll agree based on that conversation. I feel like that was a way to just finish it and be like, let's just, put a bow on the Zack Snyder interpretation of this universe. It was a 4-hour thing. It was a decent watch. I remember it being a lot better than it had any right to be. And it, Snyder got to finish, his original vision for it. And, I don't think it was a bad movie. It was just a very kind of long, it felt more like a mini series, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was probably one of the better uses of HBO Max I can think of. At a time when they've been, kind of loosey-goosey about what they should be putting as content versus films or like, shows or things that they just turn into tax write-offs as opposed to just something that could just be a HBO Max exclusive. Yeah, I thought that was a very smart way, especially during the pandemic, of kind of appeasing the fans and allowing this director to have a victory, to finish his vision, to kind of get the film that he wanted to make out there appropriately in a way that we really haven't seen outside of maybe like the Ridley Scotts of the world, a fully realized director's cut. And yeah, I thought that was really cool. I do find it amusing and sad and a little weird that there are still those Snyder fans who are like, still like, we must boycott the James Gunn, Superman. We can't have the Henry Cavill version die. And, after a certain point, I mean, they're tenacious, but you gotta let some things go. I mean,
and also I've been heartened to see that there has been at least a portion of them that have kind of just been like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna give this one a chance. And so it's not all of them, thankfully. I think that there are some who are like, yeah, this is a different director, different interpretation. Maybe it's not the one that I wanted. It's just Zack Snyder fan or whatever. But at least something, like it or hate it. And so that was like the big lead up right into this movie was, is it going to be good? James Gunn had done Guardians of the Galaxy, the whole trilogy. He had done the Suicide Squad. He had a lot of pedigree coming into this, a long career going back to, being the writer for Scooby-Doo and stuff. James Gunn, I think he's one of my, go-to screenwriters when it comes to taking kind of goofy comic book stuff and giving it life and energy. He's really good at found families in particular. Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad in particular are really good about that. So this has been my most anticipated movie of the summer. Not even by like a close margin. I genuinely I was almost kind of sad when this movie, when I saw it, because I was like, after this, I'm not as excited about everything else coming out for a while. And I think that, in that sense, I'm actually really happy with how it turned out, because I thought this movie was rather good. I think it's funny. I think it's heartfelt. I think it knows how weird it is throughout. I think it has a lot of messaging. It has a lot of ideals, but it kind of mixes it with all the punching robot stuff. And I don't know, so much of this just screams Superman to me. And it's a movie that it seems to know that it's shouldering this huge burden of being what could be at least an antidote to not just DC fatigue, but superhero fatigue. I think that it dodges the shadow of the Batman. I think that it kind of wipes off the sweat of Joker 2. Those movies kind of exist in their own little chaotic corners of like these superhero elseworlds kind of what if things. This one is trying so much harder to be like a definitive Superman movie, and it's not embarrassed about that. And I like that a lot. And I like that while I was watching this, I was not thinking about Henry Cavill. I wasn't thinking about Zack Snyder, and I wasn't thinking about all the broader stuff that has to do with the DC meta context. I was just watching this movie and enjoying it as a movie, which is what I wanted, right? David Corenswet is here playing Superman. He looks like they plucked him right out of a Rockwell painting. It's awesome. I think that him as the new Clark Kent, he's paired so well with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. I think this was one of those casting choices where I was nervous that it was too good to be true, down to Nicholas Hoult, being Lex Luthor. I was like, how could they pull it off? Because this does seem a little bit too perfect to me. But it works. They have the fast-talking charisma. It reminds me so much of Lois and Clark, the TV show, which, hasn't aged super well because Dean Cain and all that stuff. We don't have to get into that. And again, Nicholas Hoult is Lex Luthor. He is just so disturbingly smug in this. I like a lot of the standout performances in here that I wasn't expecting, including Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific. I think he kind of walks away with the movie, in my opinion. I loved seeing Anthony Carrigan show up in this as Metamorpho. I was not expecting that. That was one of those things too, where it's like, oh, when you recognize something from the comics and you have to explain it to people after the fact. I was like, oh, that happens to be one of the oldest DC comic characters. I never thought I'd see them in anything live action in my life, but there they are. Also, Nathan Fillion doing Guy Gardner, Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl. I think this movie has a lot of stuff happening in it. There's a lot of like Justice League DNA stuff, lots of nitpicks. I'm gonna throw at this movie for sure. I think that it's really shaggy in a lot of places, but I gotta say the bar was pretty high. The hopes were pretty high for me on this. But as I said before, Gunn has a track record with doing ensemble comic book movies well. Now, you could say maybe that makes him not the best person for a Superman movie, because then Superman, it should be more focused on him. There are too many characters and all that. I'm curious what you think of that. But I'll at least say this. If anybody could pull off doing a sincere, unironic Superman story in 2025, it is this guy. It's the guy who did Rocket Raccoon. It's the guy who did Peter Quill with the daddy issues. I think that this movie, it's doing well at the box office. It is not Barbie levels of good in terms of like recent big summer box office stuff. That's a high bar to clear, right? But I do think it's enough for DC to kind of breathe easy for like the next 5 minutes. I think that the movie is going to do better and better because I think the critical reviews have been mostly positive. I think audiences are liking it. I think it's going to keep building and building and do really well. I don't know if it'll hit $1 billion. I think that it's possible. I think it hits at least 700 million. I don't know if you agree though. But before we get into all that stuff, Will, I got to know. Do you agree with me even a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the film. I wasn't 100% sure going into this. I was excited like you because certainly more so than any other superhero movie that's coming out this year. Outside of being certainly curious and maybe tepidly hopeful about this new Fantastic Four movie, which I don't know if it'll be good, but I just want a win for the Fantastic Four at this point. So I'm kind of hoping against hope, maybe. I did watch Thunderbolts this week, and I thought it was ultimately pretty mid. I was kind of surprised that people are kind of as gung-ho about it as possible, considering that, I think...
Yeah. Could we, because we never talked about it on the show, right? Yeah, we both agree on that, to be clear to the listeners. Will and I are not the biggest fans of Thunderbolts. Whereas people love that movie, and I was kind of like, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit better than some of the other Phase 4, Phase 5 stuff.
Sure.
But not all of it. I mean, certainly it's not above Guardians 3 or, in my opinion, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But I thought it was a little bit more put together, but I felt like it was just kind of reheated lunch for Marvel. It just kind of felt like they were doing a lot of the same stuff they've been doing for a while, and it didn't do it better or worse. It just kind of just felt like they just did it again, except they added characters who took off their Lexapro. And then just
I think people were just taken with the grief stuff showing up the way
Right.
that it did, which it had some cool visual sort of executions, but
I
for
guess.
me, that wasn't enough to be like this movie. You know what I mean?
I think it was like a little better directed than some of the other more recent Marvel movies, but not like exceptionally so. Not like in the way that like Sam Raimi brought some character and personality to that, even if he wasn't at his like A game as he was with the Spider-Man 2. But yeah, I mean, all that to say, yeah, I was hopeful for James Gunn. I was a little worried in the sense of like he, as we've discussed, or rather you've kind of mentioned, he's somebody who is sort of like a class clown kind of personality. He tends to side with a little bit of the outsiders, and you know, like the sort of found family stuff that you're mentioning. He, outside of the Suicide Squad and the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, you know, he made his, you know, bones with the Trauma franchise, and you know,
Slither.
he wrote and starred in a superhero parody called The Specials, which I've never seen, but I've heard is pretty good. Craig Mazin directed that. He did Super, which is pretty fun and a good dark comedy. But like movies that are just kind of poking fun or like trying to kind of find that balance between ironic and sincere with superhero movies. And then when you go to the Superman, who is like the superhero, like the guy, like that he is the iconic superhero.
The
I was
most
a little
iconic
worried about,
superhero.
yeah, I was a little like, okay, it's almost like the class clown auditioning to be the homecoming king. It's a little like, okay, like you're funny, but are you the right guy for this? Like, you know, like, I mean, but like, yeah, I know he's talented. He's exceptionally clever. I knew he was going to bring some good ideas to the fold, and he did. I think all the ideas here are good and solid, and it produces, almost in spite of itself at times, a consistently entertaining, fun, engaging film. I would say, like, I think nearly all the ideas here are good, but it feels like there are maybe like 4 too many. Like, there's definitely some things here that I felt like when you see the like board filled with all these ideas, you kind of want to take off like 5 of the notepads and be like, save this for the sequel. You're probably going to get it, so just save that for later. And I might have to get into spoiler territory to discuss that more deeply, but like it does kind of feel like the sort of thing that like ironically people had about Batman v Superman, where it's just like it feels a little too eager to get to the stuff that it wants to get to the point where I think it kind of undercuts some of the stuff it's doing pretty well. In this case, like the Lois Clark dynamic, and even to an extent, like some of the fun multiverse or multidimensional stuff that is there more in the service of the plot than like kind of expanding this universe, I feel like. But I do really appreciate, as you mentioned, how unabashedly comic booky and cartoony and silly this is. It feels so fun to like see not only like Crypto, which we expected, like, okay, we're going to get finally Crypto, but yeah, like the pocket dimensions, and as you mentioned, Mr. Terrific, who's the standout of the film, and easily where someone like James Gunn really excels is like these sort of outsider weirdo characters that he can really have a ball with and like give their time to shine and write for them really well. Those all work exceptionally well, and I enjoy it. I don't really feel like the Justice Gang gets their full due here, and maybe that's just like setting up the stage for later. But yeah, I mean, outside of the kind of stuffiness of the film, I think it does work. It's consistently entertaining, as I mentioned. It does kind of feel a little bit like it's appealing to a TikTok audience of just like, something's happening, something's happening, something's happening, something's happening.
Yeah.
But I do think it does have the moments where it needs to kind of be sincere and tackle the sort of classic duality of Superman, where it's like, who is this guy who only wants to do this noble thing, and trying to balance the idea of like, can he live up to these morals? Can he be someone who, you know, the immigrant allegory here is obviously pretty potent, and it's more political than I expected going into this. I mean, I know it's not intended to be as overtly political as I think maybe some of the Fox News pundits are trying to make it seem, but like it does tackle some like stuff outside of the like Russian-Ukraine war that I wasn't anticipating in a way that I'm kind of impressed by.
I disagree. I think I think it probably started as like Russia Ukraine, and I think when October 7th happened and we started seeing the Israeli genocide of Gaza, I think that is they kind of like started to graft that onto there's so many connections to like between this movie and those real life geopolitical things, like down to they have that whole conversation, Lois and Clark, right, where they're having like a political discussion, and it sounds just like a political discussion about Israel and Gaza, where they're like, well, Gaza has done some things that are questionable, and it's like, well, but we're funding, this government that is like, bombing this other one, and oh, but they're saying they're going to liberate them, and it's like, oh, do you actually believe that? To me, it's way more that coded, like Israel Gaza, than it is Russia Ukraine. But I think you can, of course, grab from both.
It's obviously
your point
both.
stands.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's both.
I think it's more Israel Gaza, though. I think it's more overtly that.
I mean, I think it was intended to probably be more Ukraine, Russia, but as you mentioned, the war became more of a focal point. Obviously, it's a 100-year wars that's been going on for hundreds of years, so it's been.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the smoking guns is the villain character of Moravia. He looks exactly like the first prime minister of Israel. Like, they look super similar. So it's like,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not subtle in some regards. I mean, I do think it is interesting that like his temple looks exactly like the Kremlin. So, it is like,
right. It has. Yeah. So, Moravia has more of the Eastern European vibe. But then the country that they are like attacking and the people they're killing are Arab coded, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where it. Yeah. So all that to say, your point stands. It is a very political movie.
I mean, it's a movie. It's a multi-million-dollar summer blockbuster that isn't afraid to say that killing Arab children is really bad, which is more than like a lot of media pundits are willing to say at this point. So I props where it's due. In any case,
well, that's your original point, right? That's James Gunn. He likes to push buttons. He doesn't mind being controversial. There was the whole arc where he got kicked out of Disney because right-wing reactionaries brought up like old edgy tweets that he had done, and Disney freaked out and were like, they fired him basically, and he almost didn't get to make Guardians 3. One of the reasons we have this movie is because James Gunn is no stranger to sort of like online culture wars. And that's why I think culture wars are all over this movie, down to its depiction of things like what a trollbot farm could look like, for example, without giving away that particular joke.
Sure. Yeah. And like I said, I think it's a credit to James Gunn that it can have things like that in, I think most movies would just feel way, too outlandish for its own good for the sake of the film, and you don't even give it a second thought. You're just like, oh, it's a funny idea, and it continues to keep the movie's momentum going and all this stuff. And I mean, I think as a summer blockbuster, it does exactly what it sets out to do. I think for me, as a Superman movie, it's pretty good. I don't feel like I had the same feelings I felt like with the Donner films, or even to a certain extent how I felt when I originally watched Man of Steel. And I think part of that is that like there's a fascinating sort of duality in the sense of whether you like the one or the other more. Zack Snyder is more interested in the idea of like who is Superman as opposed to Clark Kent. And this movie, while it is exploring that duality, it seems to be more on the side of who is Clark Kent in relationship to Superman, which neither is wrong or neither are bad, or the right or wrong way to do it. But I think it is interesting that they are kind of looking at the same thing, but from the opposite lens. And I think maybe I'm a little bit more interested in the questions that Man of Steel was posing as opposed to this film, but I think they're both worthwhile in their own ways.
I mean, look, it has been well documented that I despise Man of Steel, and I think that movie is hot garbage. I tried to watch it 2 times and fell asleep both times. And so I just think that Zack Snyder fundamentally does not get the character. And I think you can have all kinds of interesting interpretations of Superman, but I think if you want an interpretation of Superman the way that Snyder does it, I think we've gotten that better in other media, like things like The Boys and Invincible. I just think that they do the whole anti-hero or broody or kind of dark Superman thing way better. Injustice even does it better. But all that to say, I do think it's interesting because like the Donner films, that to me is like the Donner films and the animated series, that to me is my childhood Superman. Like that's the Superman I have from my childhood, the like the pure-hearted, warm nostalgia, shucks kind of stuff. Man of Steel came out when I was like 22, 21, something like that. And so that was more of like my coming of age sort of like, that was when the cynicism came in, where I became an adult for the first time. And that movie just really depressed and bored me because it seemed like it was me coming to terms with how that Superman from my childhood was gone. Now I'm in my 30s, and now we get James Gunn's Superman, which is like, you know what? Being kind and being a good person and hating billionaires and all that stuff, that's Superman. And I'm like, yes, I'm in that mood right now. And so to me, it's kind of interesting, just based on my lifetime, I can easily sort of chart stages of my own sort of take on the character and what he represents to me personally as one of the reasons why I just felt so refreshed by this movie, where I felt like, kind of to our earlier discussion, thank God we got a superhero movie in general, or even just like a blockbuster that is not obsessed with making sure that all 4 quadrants are 100% satisfied, because it does push boundaries. It does risk offending people. And that makes it interesting. It makes it worth discussing. It makes it braver. It makes it just something that's like not just another cash grab to me. Like, that was the biggest thing for me with Elio. I liked Elio, but it did feel so sanitized in certain places where I feel like they could have gone so much farther with it. They could have taken more risks. And that movie, I think, would have stood out way more. I think people would have been more drawn to it. But they were so afraid. Disney, they're just so afraid of like the online culture war stuff that we were talking about, that it has just pushed them into this boring blah corner. It's one of the main reasons why I think these movies are, particularly the Marvel ones, have just lost so much, bang and pop to them. Because this one, you're right, it is unabashedly a comic booky thing. It's not embarrassed about that. There's no irony to it. Like, when there's humor, it doesn't just like replace any of the tension. It like raises tension. I think that anytime like you see Superman doing his thing in this, I don't know, I just think it's like sincere in what it's trying to do. But I do think your whole like 4 too many ideas thing is totally fair. And I had the same thought. I feel like it's not even that I think that they should have shaved off any of the subplots. I just wanted the core emotional arc to breathe a bit more. For example, I just think that, I don't know, I feel like Superman and Lois don't really get to hang out much in this. They have like the big scene. They have sort of ancillary scenes throughout the movie, but they're like big chunks where things are sort of like you were saying with the TikTok thing. It's like bang, bang, bang. That like an hour felt like it went by before the characters even interacted, which, I don't know, there was something a little off to me. It felt a little bit too quick, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to try to dance around spoilers here, but I feel like by the time we get to the third act and like the world is on the verge of collapsing and it has to deal with like 3 or 4 other subplots in addition to that, and I feel like rather than be more engaged, I'm kind of getting taken out of it because I'm like, okay, why? I feel like the world ending, I know these other things are important, but this should be number one priority right now. I feel like this is the kind of thing that we kind of need to focus on for the time being. But like the movie is it kind of feels like it's ADHD jumping around between all these different things to the point where it's like okay,
crypto. It's just
right.
like, it's so hungry for life, and it's like, it's infectious, but yeah, it's also a little annoying in that respect, kind of like how crypto can be kind of annoying, but in an endearing way, I guess.
Yeah, there is a puppy dog charm to it. I will say, I do think there is some irony to the humor. I think the intents are the nice core sincerity that has kind of defined the more recent era of James Gunn's work. But, I do think the movie, it does kind of try to have its cake and eat it too, where it's like, it does feel a little embarrassed at times, I think, to be a full Superman movie. I mean, even down to the point of not doing an origin story, which I think was probably the right call. But there is something about like, I feel like there is if James Gunn is to relate to any of these characters, I feel like it's a little bit of Luthor and a little bit of the Superman thing. It's like this idea of like him kind of fighting his cynicism against this newfound sort of like older, more mature optimism that he's had. And obviously that's not the core focus of the film, but I feel like that's kind of something that drives the emotionality of it a little bit. And, I don't fully buy when Superman's having this sort of monologue about the goodness of sincerity, but I do believe that James Gunn comes from a, at least somewhat pure place, even if he's not able to write monologue that I fully buy emotionally. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting in that regard. Like I said, it does kind of feel like maybe just because James Gunn is still sort of the class clown that he can't help but snicker at some of the stuff with Superman that is just so bald-faced sincerity that, you know, like I feel like he almost is a little afraid to kind of deal with some of that in a head-on sort of way. But in a way that I feel like Zack Snyder, however you feel about the Man of Steel movie, he's willing to be sincere all the way and just kind of just be like, this is, yeah, I'm maybe overly so, but at least he is very, very sincere about, you know, dealing in the mythos of this character. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm sort of in between as far as like what these movies are. I like both of them. Obviously, I'm a bigger fan than most of Man of Steel, but I appreciate what both movies are doing. And I think contextually really appreciate what Gunn is doing because he's a clever guy. And I think he has a lot of clever ideas here. Even if I don't fully think they work as a single film, I think he's bringing a jubilance and an eagerness to this property that it's needed for a long time.
It definitely needs it. It definitely needs it. And, you know, there are plenty of things in the film where I certainly agree. I think the ending is probably my least favorite part about this movie. It just has such a weird, it's too tidy. I think that Gunn does want to kind of tighten everything up at the end, and it had been setting up more nuance. It'd been setting up a little bit more of this kind of ongoing, like, was this the right thing for Superman to do or whatever. I think aspects of it though still work. Like upon further reflection, I've been a little bit kinder to the ending. I do think that there are, and I don't want to give anything away, of course, but I do kind of get what he was going for, and I kind of appreciate that a little more, even if I don't think it was executed as well as I would hope. But I just gotta say, for me, like it does come down to like what is your interpretation of the character? What do you get out of the character the most? And I think for Gunn, he's really good at writing outsiders, like we've been saying. And I think that his way into this character was, well, Clark Kent is an outsider. Everyone is his found family. So there's an obvious heart line there. He finds the sort of immigrant thing, which the immigrant story has been part of Superman for a very long time. And it's just sort of particularly polarizing today for many reasons. But we are kind of in this like upswing, I guess, for like content that is a little bit more like countercultural to these more reactionary right-wing sort of sentiments around things like immigration and you know, US intervention and things like that. It's obviously a very complicated thing, and people are going to bring their own politics to the film and all of that stuff. But I think it's coming out at a unique time where it probably will do better than it would have otherwise, just because I think people are sort of in the mood for a movie like this, where the billionaire is like just an actual cartoon villain. There isn't this kind of thing like they were doing in Batman v Superman or Thanos, you know, where it's like, you know, the villain is, you know, just kind of misunderstood, or they have these good intentions or whatever. Lex Luthor is just plain bad. Like he just does cartoonishly evil things in this, and he has rationale and logic to it, but the movie isn't trying to both sides it. Like it isn't trying to say like, well, you know, Lex has a point. Maybe, you know, maybe it is. No, the movie is sort of like, you know what? Sometimes you just have to save lives. Look, these people are about to die. Save them. And what the movie is trying to say about the sincerity of like just what a superhero can be, I think that's why it appeals so much to me, because it finds truth and simplicity where so much of our media and blockbuster media lately has been, all right, let's complicate the things that are familiar and iconic to us. That's going to bring us this like, you know, this more profound thing. It's something we've been dealing with for a long time, since like I think The Dark Knight is one of those first turning points where it was like, let's really unpack the Batman character. And that can be really great, obviously. We've gotten so many cool things coming out of what Christopher Nolan did with Batman Begins and Dark Knight and all that, and moving into the Marvel films, you know, in bits and pieces. I think though at this current moment, this kind of movie is where I'm like, yeah, give me the pulp fiction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a pulp to be found here.
You're gonna go for a Tarantino joke, yeah. Yeah, my favorite part was when David Corenswet, you know, fought off 88 ninjas, killed them all. Never mind.
Yeah, are you trying to refer to like the Michael Madsen Superman monologue from Kill Bill Volume 2?
Rest in peace. Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to get at here?
No, that was just a happy accident, I guess. Not a happy accident, actually. I shouldn't say that, but you know.
Because I feel like that monologue kind of is the fuel for this movie in some respects. like I'm sure it planted some seeds in James Gunn's head when he was younger. And by younger, I mean probably about our age. So yeah, in any case, yeah, I mean, I since we didn't really talk about Lex Luthor much, I will say I really like how this movie can make Lex Luthor appeal to now without making him a caricature of Trump or Elon Musk or,
yeah, he's a composite. Like, he has some Elon Musk things, but it's not a one-to-one. Because, like, Elon Musk is coded so differently. Right. I don't see any Donald Trump in him at all. But no, yeah, he's still Lex Luthor from the comics, which I appreciated.
But there is a one-to-one with now in the sense of, like, he is using this sort of pettiness and this, internal distrust of others to try to speak to the common man and use that as a thorough line for, like, oh, like, I'm actually appealing to you. I'm trying to relate to you. But really, it's just fueling his own petty self-interest. And he doesn't care if he's... Yeah. He doesn't care if he's destroying the world in the process or hurting people. And the fact that it isn't directly related to Trump and all that, but like people can make that one-to-one, I think speaks more about the now than like what the film is doing. And I think it's clever about that. And I have to agree with the Alicia Wilkinson, I think, who's the one who wrote the review for Vulture. Wilkinson? Yeah. She's the one, I think, that wrote the review for Vulture with the great headline of just like Superman isn't trying to be
Alison Wilmore, I think.
Is that Alison Wilmore? I get the two mixed up, unfortunately.
I'll double check.
Yeah. But just that headline of just Superman isn't a political film. We just have real life supervillains now. I think it just hits the nail on the head so hard.
Yeah. Alison Wilmore, I was correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's, I think the perfect moment that sums it up, it's when Lex Luthor is kind of walking into this, particular place and there's action and violence happening all around him. And that feeling like he knows he's so untouchable. Billionaires know they're so untouchable. He's like, literally, like, stuff is flying. It could kill him at any moment and it doesn't faze him at all. And some people will watch that and be like, wow, he's so confident. But what you could read into it, if you are so persuaded, is like, yeah, that's kind of the attitude of people like him. He knows he'll get away with anything. He knows there aren't consequences for anything he does. I think that, I've seen plenty of comments being like, this movie's so unrealistic. Billionaires don't face consequences for their actions, right? So, yeah, I think there's something kind of nice there about how Gunn has fun with the real world stuff, but to me, it never takes away from his Superman movie. It just sort of informs the context of the movie, down to how he portrays even silly things like what this movie sort of does with Gen Z characters like Jimmy Olsen and, his Riz, whatever you want to say, and the selfie influencer stuff. I never felt like it was tacked on. It just felt pretty organic to the movie. The only thing that kind of didn't ring true to me again was stuff that happens in the ending, in terms of certain things happen and transpire involving social media and reactions and stuff. And I'm like, that didn't feel realistic at all. I felt a little bit too wish fulfillment. And so stuff like that, where I'm just like, not the neatest bow, but I do think the movie still does a good job of like, yeah, it sets up more sequels, it sets up spinoffs and all that stuff, sets up a whole universe, but it still is its own movie. It answers its own questions. It has its own beginning, middle, end. And so I appreciated that. We didn't talk too much about the Justice Gang characters, except, yeah, we both liked Mr. Terrific. I thought Hot Girl was kind of like there. I felt like there wasn't much with her. I feel like at least Guy Gardner and Nathan Fillion and all that, like, he had some fun one-liners. He cracked jokes. He was a fun kind of take on Green Lantern that does fit the comics. And I was so glad they went with him instead of like the more kind of like Hal Jordan, yeah, John Stewart, like the more kind of straight-laced Green Lanterns. That would have been pretty boring. So going with the sort of like a-hole Green Lantern was, I think, the right approach.
Well, I think, aren't they doing like a show with Hal Jordan and John Stewart?
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like they would have their own kind, like they are more protagonist kind of characters, right? John Stewart in particular, where I feel like, yeah, Guy Gardner is perfect for this kind of movie where he's there. He's like a side character. He's not, and his bowl cut is weird. Like, I don't know. He just fits the vibe. The way he uses his powers is just funny and like it's kind of imaginative. So,
and he's like a corporate chill and just doesn't really. He's just kind of in it for the. He claims he has morals, but he's really just kind of just in it for the notoriety and the fame and all that and the prestige. Yeah, no, I was cool with the Justice Gang. Like I said, I think Gunn makes it very clear, like, Mr. Terrific is a character I have most fun writing. And after a certain point, he's just like, I just want to only write for Mr. Terrific because he's a character that he can fit into the best, which I think was the right call. And I think, I think he's good about appealing to his talents and knowing where his strengths are at this point. I will say, I do think he needs to stop with the spinning camera action scene thing. It's getting a little old at this point.
I appreciated the song choice. I did. But yeah, I have to agree. It was a little derivative of his own thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even the the Lex Luthor scene you're talking about, it's more or less doing the same thing, except without a pop song beat. I don't know, it just seems like he's kind of relied on that too much by this point.
He did it even when characters were just talking. Sure. He did a lot with Luthor in particular. Yeah, even when he was just I get it. It's adding movement to the scene. It's making it more dynamic. But I have to admit, Gunn hasn't always been my favorite director in terms of the actual velocity of different scenes. And I think he does good action, though. I think because he does character first action, where even the effects, like the CGI, it's for him, it's always passable. It's never wow, which I think is fine because, Superman. It can be a little cartoony.
I mean, he's really good about making the CG characters come alive, like Rocket Raccoon or Killer Shark.
He's good at practical effects too, and how they interact. Like the Fortress of Solitude is practical. The only thing that was CGI about that was how it comes out of the ice.
Right.
But that was an actual structure. And even the Hall of Justice, they filmed it in, I think, Ohio, Cleveland, because the actual building, the Hall of Justice from the comics, is inspired by the design of, I think, that train station.
Makes sense, yeah. But I mean, Crypto, I think, is pretty well animated in the film. I think he puts a lot of emphasis on that and stuff. And I think that falls in line with Rocket Raccoon is a really well animated character and feels organic to see and doesn't just feel like a special effect. I do agree, though, when it comes to the action, some of the other things, even Metamorphosis, the CG for him isn't great, but it's also one of those things where it's he's such a odd character to kind of bring into actuality it's kind of a challenge for the CG artist, I think, to do. So I can cut him a little bit of slack in that regard.
And I think there's some to the characterization, right? He gets the characterization right, so you're more forgiving of the sloppiness, I guess, or the shagginess.
And I think it's like a composite, right? It's half makeup, half CG, right? Or is it all CG? I was gonna say,
I think
the makeup.
Well, I was thinking of there's a set piece and where he has to transform and do crazy stuff like that. I think in terms of when he's sitting down, I think that was probably mostly practical. It looked
that's
practical,
what I thought. So, yeah, and that looked good. I mean, I thought that was cool.
Gunn loves to do kind of that goofy alien sort of get up. So any chance, any excuse he can,
The kind of the Star Trek thing where it's the goofy makeup, outerworldly kind of stuff. He was really good about doing that in the Guardians movies too. Yeah. Fun movie.
Good movie. Good fun time. I think it's going to keep on doing well. Do you think this movie is going to continue to make money and do well? What's your feeling right now? Because I see a lot of people talking about it. The buzz is really high. There's a lot of conversation around it. So I see it continuing to endure. But what do you think?
I think it's going to do well. I can only speak to my audience reaction, which is I could tell the audience was liking it, but I didn't get the sense that I loved it. They didn't clap at the end or type talking hyperbolics or whatever. They were clearly the vibe of the room was we're enjoying this, but it wasn't they were laughing at every line and all this stuff. It just kind of felt yeah, this is good. We're enjoying this. And I wonder if maybe for the average superhero fan who is seen, a lot of iterations of Superman kind of fall in line with this. I don't know if it's going to be a breath of fresh air for them. I think it's going to be a really impactful viewing for younger audiences who never really had that Superman experience and kind of grew up maybe with the Man of Steel movies, which was kind of meant to be a little bit more of a, as you mentioned, darker, moodier take, and they didn't have the Christopher Reeves experience. And so I think for them, this will be a really big film. And the way that the Matt Reeves Batman movie seems to be a much bigger deal for younger Gen Z than I would have expected, to the point where they kind of maybe prefer that over Dark Knight, maybe just because they just watched it at the right age or whatever. But yeah, I think it will do well. I think it's going to appeal to audiences. I just don't know if it's going to be a groundswell success per se in the way that the first Guardians of the Galaxy was.
I do think it is positioned pretty well because right now its main competition is Jurassic World Rebirth which is doing better internationally than it is domestically for sure. But I think that Superman is doing better domestically. I think in terms, if you're looking at the calendar, like F1 is kind of like it didn't do the Top Gun Maverick thing. Sorry, Joseph Kosinski. Good movie, but I just don't think it had that same kind of like the movies are back kind of, clap for the box office kind of situation,
I think that's also appealing mostly to an older audience. Like I don't see that appealing as much to like the 20-somethings or the teens.
Which is fine for its own efforts, right? Like, it's making its money, it's doing well and all, but yeah, in terms of like Superman's competition, it's going to have a whole other weekend basically to itself because its only real competition is Eddington, and I know what you did last summer, and I just don't think that those movies are going to necessarily like step on Superman's toes. The week after that will be the first real test, though, because that's when we see the Fantastic Four first steps kind of come in. Oh, Hi will be coming out as well, so that the indie crowd will have something to watch too. But I am very curious at how Fantastic Four is going to do, and if people are going to come out for a Marvel flick. I think though Superman probably, based on the reviews and the word of mouth, I think it's probably going to have a really good rest of July and August too. I think it's going to ride out most of August without much trouble. We have Bad Guys 2 coming out in August, the first weekend, Naked Guns. We have some stuff, but I don't know. I don't see stuff here that's going to just like, it doesn't have like a Barbie or an Oppenheimer to compete with kind of situation. It has like Freakier Friday. Like I think it's going to do fine, I guess, just based on the timing of its release.
Yeah, second week, the drop-off is going to determine how much people are liking it. I don't foresee it being a big drop-off. Like you said, I think it seems like the word of mouth is good. People are talking about it. It seems like people are enthusiastic about it enough that they'll recommend it to friends and keep it going. I do think it is going to be that Fantastic Four weekend that's really going to test it. But yeah, I think it'll hold its own fine. I don't think it's going to be that winded by Fantastic Four, unless Fantastic Four is like an absolute masterpiece, which I don't foresee it being. I could see it being good, but I don't know. I don't see it being like a tour de force like masterpiece.
Yeah, I did see the trailer. Weirdly underwhelming. I was kind of like, huh, that it kind of just looks flat.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting that both these movies are taking the this whole thing set up approach. Like both of them are kind of just like, you get the gist. Let's go back to let's kind of see what they're doing after they become a team, which I kind of get for Fantastic Four, even though we haven't had a good like official origin film for it. I get the like, we've only been able to do the like they become the Fantastic Four thing before the universe collapses. And the movie stops being a thing. So it's like, let's just hedge our bet and actually do, like you said, the sequel first, just because we don't know if we'll actually get a sequel.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. But okay, before we say goodbye, let's quickly play the Rotten Tomatoes game. Been a while. Well, Ashton, you are going to guess the Rotten Tomatoes score for Superman. You'll let me know, of course, if you accidentally saw the score already. This is your chance to be honest.
I saw it when the reviews first dropped, but I haven't seen it recently, so I don't know what it's like since all the reviews came in. Like, I just saw the very early version, which I don't even remember what the score was. It was like, I knew it was fresh, but I don't remember exactly what it was.
All right, so you claim. But as of this moment, it's at 384 reviews. Pretty, high, but kind of on par for a movie of this scale by, this, many days into its release. So what do you think the score is on the tomato meter? That is the Rotten Tomato score based on critics only.
I think it's obviously positive. It's probably even certified fresh. I don't think... I have a feeling it's not quite in the 90s, but it's probably in the high 80s. I'm going to say 87%.
You're only off a little bit. It is certified fresh, but it is a little lower. It's 83%. So I think the highest it got that I think I saw was 85. I think 85 was its like initial, and then it went down a couple points since then. I haven't seen it crawl upward at all. But let's go to the popcorn meter because like we got to listen to the will of the people. No pun intended. The popcorn meter, for that we have 10,000 plus verified ratings. Will Ashton, what do the masses have to say about Superman in percentage form?
I think they're less hesitant than critics. Like I think even if they have complaints, they're liking the film. They're probably in a similar boat to me where it's just like, objectively, I think this is a good film. There are some nitpicks, but we're liking it, if not outright loving it. So I'm going to say 93%.
Oh, you are spot on, Will Ashton. 93%. It is verified hot. That's the new Rotten Tomatoes certified fresh show for audiences. Okay.
Not feeling that. Not feeling that.
We could workshop that a little bit more. You're right. Let's take a look at the cinema score. You're on a roll. You know, you did okay with the critic score. You were spot on. Perfect score for audience. But what about the cinema score? You know, let's see how you roll the dice on the Vegas crowd. Audiences were polled for the cinema score. Well, Ashton, it could be anywhere from an A+ to an F. What say you?
I feel like this one I was actually spoiled on. Isn't it an A?
It is not an A. So I guess we're not spoiled on it.
Oh, okay. I thought I got spoiled on it being a straight A. Was Elio an A? Something I heard recently was an A.
I'd have to. I don't know about Elio, but I could see Elio being an A because it's like a pretty safe, crowd pleasing kind of thing.
Sure.
But no, this one is A-, which is actually the same as Man of Steel.
Nice.
There you go. And we'll finish out with the average rating on Letterboxd. On Letterboxd, we have 738,000 people have logged this film as of this recording. Actually, I just refreshed it. 743,000 since we started recording. Will Ashton, the average rating could be anywhere between 0 and 5. So what do you think it is?
I think, kind of similar like what I was saying with the audience score for the tomato meter. I think people are, at the very least, liking it if they don't love it. I think it's at least in the 3.5 range. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than that on Letterboxd. It seems like Letterboxd appeals to younger people, and this movie is really, I think, appealing to younger audiences than older ones just because it has that quick pacing. It gives a fresh take on Superman. Superman is a character there in Doctor 2 as compared to like maybe Batman or whatever. So I'm going to say 3.7.
Well, you're a little off. You underestimated Superman. Bad news. Oh. It's 4.0, a little bit higher. Okay.
So line of thinking, I just undercut it.
By the way, I didn't notice this until I was on the Letterboxd page, but I didn't realize that Michael Rooker and Palm Clemente from the Guardians movies were actually voice characters on this. I don't know if you realize. Yeah, they voiced two of the super robots. I knew Alan Tudyk voiced the main one, number 4. But that looks cool. I didn't know that.
Well, Alan Tudyk, I think at this point is contractually obligated to voice a robot. If there's a robot voice, yeah.
Well, Nathan Fillion called him up and was like, "I'm scared. I miss you. Let's do Firefly again." Just kidding. Come and do this Superman movie with me.
Yeah, but I did find it appealing that like somebody who had a prominent voice role in one of James Gunn's films gets to have a screen cameo in this movie, and then 2 actors who are, prominent in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies get to do voice only cameos. It's kind of a reversal in some sorts.
Yeah, I agree. Just kind of looking at some of our, friends of Cinemaholics and their own Letterboxd reviews. Clint Worthington, friend of the show, gave it 3.5 stars. And what a nice little thing about it there. Allison Johnson, one of our, co-founders at In Between Drafts, she gave the film 3.5 stars as well. I'm seeing a lot of 3.5s and 4s and such. Yeah, I'm seeing some kind of middle, like 2.5, stuff like that. But best friend of the show, Kimber Myers, I think we can say she's a best friend of the show. I don't think I've said that before, but she's an OG. I mean, she's been around since 2017. She gave it 4 stars and the heart, which
nice.
Kimber means business. Let's see here. Anybody else? I'm sure there are more folks. Yep, Ryan Oliver, friend of the show, 4 stars. He's getting close to best friend of the show. Like, he's like a day away from it. Aaron Dicer, another friend of the show, gave it 3.5. Charlie Ridgely, best friend of the show, gave it 4.5 stars. Matt Serafini, best friend of the show, no stars because Matt leaves all the stars on Hollywood Boulevard. That's Matt. But he did give it a little heart. I gotta see. I haven't read his little review yet for it though. He said, "I'll say more when I see it a second time to properly digest it, but I really love this. Pumped my fist in the air multiple times." Oh, that's nice, Matt. Let's see here. Corey Woodruff also wrote a little review. He didn't do a heart. Corey's all business. He didn't do stars. He didn't do hearts. But he did write any movie about the power of kindness in journalism with Brendan Fraser 2.0 playing Superman, where a magic dog beats the everlasting crap out of absolutely evil people. Gets a hell yeah from me. He did watch it again and gave it some more praise there. So definitely check that out. Brogan Luke Boas, another friend of the show, gave it 4.5 stars. Well, Ashton, are you seeing a trend here? People love this movie. Our friends do, at least.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel like my Letterboxd is maybe a little bit more tepid, but there are definitely some people who absolutely love and rave it.
I haven't seen yours yet. Well, yeah, I must have missed yours because I don't see it at all. But yeah, I just finished going through the rest of them.
I'm pretty happy with my Letterboxd reaction. I don't know how many people will find it funny.
Oh, there it is. I accidentally skipped over it. You said makes a commendable effort of combating the persistent sexlessness of the modern superhero genre by including a modest supporting term from Slavko Burak. Which, by the way, that does remind me, we didn't mention Beck Bennett. We also didn't mention that the film has been censored by like India.
Yeah.
Because apparently the makeout scene was a little bit too steamy. The makeout scene between Metamorpho and Clark Kent.
And also the Green Lantern middle finger got censored, I think, in India as well.
I could see that. But I can also see us ending the show right here. Thank you so much for listening to Cinemaholics. Not sure when we'll be back on the horn to talk another film, but I'm sure it'll be a good one when we do. Thanks so much for listening. And don't forget, you can find more stuff that have to do with us on cinemaholics.com and also in between drafts as well. We do have Discord as well. You can find a link to in the show notes. But with that, from the Internet California, I am Jon Negroni.
I mean, I will say I'd be down to do an Elio review. I've seen it, but maybe that's another discussion for another day, quite literally. From the Internet, Pennsylvania, I am Will Ashton, and I can do anything. I am Will Ashton. There you go.
See you next time.